In February 2020, the FEU Dance Company celebrated its 60th anniversary with a concert called Sisenta. Filmmaker Alexandra Lizo Garcia and her team were present then and began taking footage of the performance, the audience, and this temple to the arts. No one foresaw that less than a month later, the country and the rest of the world would be locked down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Alex persisted in finding ways of discovering and then retelling the story of the FEU Auditorium, its history and legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you are watching, and feel free to comment your location in the chat. I saw there's already someone from Virginia. Welcome. Thank you for joining us from near and far and from across time zones to attend today's premiere of Bravo!
In 1949, a theater in Manila triggered a cultural renaissance. Before the construction of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, there was only one premier center for the performing arts, upon whose stage numerous talents blossomed. It all began with one man's dream. In 1939, an open-air auditorium stood on the campus of the growing Far Eastern University. There were glamorous celebrations and parades with some of the most colorful events of the time. The arts programs of the university were expanding, but something was missing. Actress and director Sara Joaquin founded the FEU Drama Guild and wanted a space where young talents could shine. She reminisced, "I approached the founder of the university, Dr. Nicanor Reyes, and presented my suggestion for a real professional theater, where the student actors could perform to a mature audience who would be appreciative of their maiden efforts." They performed the play Call Me Mike, an off-Broadway hit in the Rufino Theater along Rizal Avenue. At the reception, Dr. Reyes took me aside and said, "Congratulations! I promised to build you a big, beautiful theater."
The FEU Auditorium, first of all, I think is important because of its history, because it was a realization of a promise made by the founder, Dr. Nicanor Reyes, to Sara Joaquin, a promise which actually was fulfilled by the trustees after the war, when Dr. Reyes had died.
We owe it really to those who have come before us, to Dr. Nicanor Reyes, who promised a world-class theater to Sara Joaquin, who started the FEU Theater Guild and had performances in different random spots of campus, in different theaters outside of Manila. He promised her a world-class theater that she could be proud of. She was definitely proud of it, but Dr. Nicanor Reyes never got to see his dream fulfilled. So we are fulfilling that dream.
In 1941, this promise was halted. World War II broke out, and the Japanese Imperial Army seized the FEU campus. They burned and destroyed university records, books and facilities, and turned the buildings into a garrison and warehouse. They also took the life of Dr. Nicanor Reyes. After the war, FEU's Board of Trustees revived the dream of Dr. Nicanor Reyes and began to rebuild. A part of that dream was his promise to build a world-class auditorium.
My father's choice of the Art Deco style epitomized the commitment to bring Philippine education into the future. He wanted to give a quality education in a quality environment.
I think about the FEU Auditorium as some kind of temple. So if we have a temple for the visual arts in the museums, and we have a temple for maybe textual arts in the library, we also need to have temples for the performance arts. And this is what the FEU Auditorium is about.
Pablo Sr.'s design approach was influenced by his education at the University of London in the late 20s and early 30s. This was the height of Art Deco style in Europe that influenced him. The current design at the auditorium using curved lines inside the auditorium was his visual expression of Art Deco with a combination of form and function. I would like to think that it was his thinking outside the box at that time.
Pablo Antonio, who became a national artist for architecture, imagined and executed the Art Deco design of the auditorium, which focused on simplicity, symmetry, and subtlety. The gradual curves, ribbed piers, geometric volumes and patterns created not just aesthetic beauty, but also excellent acoustics. The curves allowed the sound to surround the audience. It was a state-of-the-art theater like no other. Architect Antonio used the latest technologies to create the most modern auditorium of its time. It had the first ever revolving stage in the country and was the first world-class theater in the Philippines to have been built after the war. A cultural renaissance exploded. The FEU Auditorium became the cultural center of the Philippines. Everyone, from the who's who and the intelligentsia to the artists, art lovers, and youth, came to the FEU Auditorium. They watched as the most talented performers sang, played musical instruments, conducted, danced, acted.
We've had a lot of memorable performances here by notable international and national artists. So that's what makes this place so special.
This was the cultural center of the Philippines from 1949. So many of the Philippines' greatest artists have performed here. They premiered works here. They began their careers here. National artists became national artists because of what they staged here.
National Artist for Literature Nick Joaquin said, "On performance nights, Moraita was transformed into a dazzling Mayfair. As the beautiful people stepped out of limousines in their diamonds and designers, perfuming the Moraita ambiance with their French aromas."
The auditorium then, as now, was mostly for use by the students, whereas in the early years, it was for the public, mostly the high culture circle.
But Moraita didn't belong only to these darlings of Vanity Fair, who composed only a portion of Moraita's habitual audience. The greater part of that was ambitious but unglamorous. The poets, fictionists, painters, sculptors and would-be singers, dancers and actors who had skipped meals to be able to afford a Moraita ticket. In the 1950s and 1960s, one could not claim to be of the theater if he or she had not performed at the FEU Auditorium, the first cultural center of the country, said Nicahudo, Green and Gold Artist Awardee for Theater, and first director of the President's Committee on Culture, now the FEU Center for the Arts. World-famous international artists performed here, including Italian tenor Arrigo Polla, the teacher of Luciano Pavarotti, soprano Helen Trabell of the Old Metropolitan Opera House of New York, renowned violinist Isaac Stern, prima ballerina Alexandra Danilova, and unequivocal dancer-choreographer Martha Graham. The FEU Auditorium was not only a stage for the world's top acts, it also launched the careers of many talented Filipino artists and was where many of their works received their world premieres. Dr. Alejandro Roses, National Artist for Literature, said, "When the Far Eastern University Auditorium was established, it was not only the cultural center of the country, but it was also literally the center of Philippine stage culture. All the best theater presentations of the time were presented at the FEU Auditorium. Even the Manila Symphony Orchestra made the FEU Auditorium their home for 8 years. Local performances left unforgettable and vivid impressions on not just the FEU community, but on the country. Ballerina Pasita Madrigal Gonzalez opened the FEU Auditorium with a recital of her Manila Ballet Academy in December 1949. Tenor Don David, violinist Guy Lopez Cabayao, and sopranos Conching Rosal, Conchita Gaston, Jovita Fuentes, and Fides Coyugan Asensio were among some of the most talented local artists who performed on its stage.
Imagine my last note, I sing lying down with my head back. And I started that was the only time, whoa, I could hear the applause. I said, yeah. That is the most memorable.
Dramatic soprano Celerina Pujante Cayabyab, mother of National Artist for Music Ryan Cayabyab, also performed with Italian tenor Arrigo Polla. She played the title role of Aida in 1958. Leonor Rosa Goquinco, National Artist for Dance, created a tradition that is still practiced before beginning a performance, not just in FEU, but all around the country. Incidentally, it was at these performances that this choreographer reeled off the evening with the playing of the Philippine National Anthem, a practice which since has become a widespread one.
There's a story of when Leonor Orosa Goquinco, our National Artist for Dance, choreographed a series of pieces for an evening of dance. And she thought, let me start with the national anthem. When people heard it, they naturally stood up. And that became a tradition for all performances all around the country to start a performance with the national anthem. And it started here.
With major performances featuring outstanding local and international artists in concerts, operas, ballets, plays, folk dances, zarzuelas, and films, the reach of the FEU Auditorium went beyond university walls, inspiring generations to come. Jesus Cruz, Green and Gold Artist Awardee and former director of the President's Committee on Culture recalled, "My earliest memory of the FEU Auditorium dates back to my third year at the boys' high school, when I watched Rodgers and Hammerstein's South Pacific, the first Broadway musical staged in the Philippines." The FEU Auditorium became the hallowed ground which honed the artistic talents of its students and prepared them for greater stages, both local and abroad. Sara Joaquin said, "Also in these halls, we won the Palanca Silver Trophy for the best play in the Inter-University One-Act Play Contest in 1955. From here also came good movie and television actors, as well as brilliant orators enjoying successful careers not only in this country, but also in many other nations of the world." Around this time, Alejandro Roses, the Dean of the Institute of Arts and Sciences, who later became a national artist for literature, formed the FEU Folk Dance Group. Corazon Enigo trained 100 dancers, and in 1957, they made their debut in the Philippine Folk Dance Festival. They were met with thunderous applause. Scouts who had seen them began to invite them to international events. They performed at the Théâtre des Nations in Paris, the Hispanico-American Folklore Competition in Spain, and the Bergen Music Festival in Germany. Not only did they astound the world with their performances, but they also took pride in sharing the beauty of Philippine culture with the world. Head of the Physical Education Department and General Manager of the FEU Cultural Mission to Europe, Alfredo Reyes, said, "The group was a smash hit in the Théâtre des Nations and had an extended run in the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in Paris. In 1959, the group became the first Philippine-based university group to win competitions in Europe. It won the grand prizes in Spain, the Hispanico-Americano Folklore Competition in Cáceres, as well as the Palma de Mallorca Folklore Competition."
I've seen magazines when the FEU group went to Europe. It says FEU, yung physical education, it's either you take, one semester you take swimming or volleyball or basketball or folk dance. Sabi ko, teka, folk dance. I can dance in this one. Plus, I remember what I saw, bayanihan ko. Yeah, why not? I'll join him and maybe I can be like bayanihan, or I can go someplace, I can travel. Combining drama with dancing, ibang feeling ko na I'm not just dancing, I'm acting, Sabi nga nila, join the Navy and see the world, Sabi ko naman, no, be a dancer and see the world.
The golden years of the 50s and 60s ended with the opening of other performing arts halls around town, particularly the Philem Life Theater in Manila, the Meralco Theater in Pasig, and the Cultural Center of the Philippines in Pasay. Then, martial law was declared in 1972.
With the powers vested in the President by the Constitution of the Philippines.
The university still operated as usual, with only a slight decline of enrollees. Students vented their ire by writing on the walls. Graffiti was all over any free space.
The auditorium transformed into another kind of stage. For the student leaders, it became a place to air their grievances and be heard. It was their Plaza Miranda.
During martial law, Nicanor Reyes was, before they call it Moraita. No? That was the meeting point of students coming from UP, from UST. That was the meeting point. And they would start writing on the wall, no? Some with communistic, I would say, writings on the wall. Some are really the student organizations, sila Hapson. I can name those students. They would meet there.
In 1989, Dr. Lourdes Montenola took over as chair of FEU, ushering in a cultural renaissance. Under her guidance and prodding, the Board of Trustees agreed to bring FEU back to its former glory, including the auditorium. Together with newly installed President Felixberto Santamaria, they created the President's Committee on Culture and the Arts in 1990.
For Dr. Reyes, it was important that FEU give the same attention, provide scholarships for the arts, academics, and sports. It is nice to know that FEU's fortes of art and culture and sports have been valid all along because they contribute to the formation of character and the enhancement of the quality of life. The administration, especially the president, wished to encourage the students to appreciate the arts, drama, music, and dance to be performed mostly in the auditorium.
The best performing arts programs were presented in the auditorium, bringing cultural life back to the university. Some of the notable performances included those of the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra, the Philippine Madrigal Singers, Ballet Philippines, prima ballerina Lisa Macuja Elizalde, with Osias Barroso and pianist Raul Sunico.
We are thankful that FEU has been retained and in fact remodeled, so to speak, and the piano was refurbished. And we hope that it will be available not only for FEU people but also for people outside who may want to perform there. There were a couple of things that actually attracted me there. First of all, the beautiful acoustics of the auditorium at the time, and the piano that they had. My hearing is quite different from the hearing of as an audience. My hearing as a performer, and there are venues where you know that there is a sympathetic feeling when you play on the instrument. If the sound that you are producing, you know, is carrying through to the audience. There is that kind of feeling in FEU. And not to mention, of course, the enthusiastic response of the audience. Every time I would perform at the FEU Auditorium, it was always packed. One of my more memorable performances, other than my own solo lecture recitals, was the one I had with the blind pianist, Carlos Ibay. He could play so many difficult pieces. He played a concerto. It's a piece for piano and orchestra, and I was the assisting pianist for him because I was playing the part of the orchestra. And that concerto, the Rachmaninoff No. 2, of course, it's a very difficult one because it has millions of notes. And for somebody blind to play millions of notes like that, it's really a wonder how he can even play, and he played it quite cleanly. The arts is not only for the artist, art is not only for the musician, it's for everybody because it's a form of therapy for all of us, a way of life for everybody. Way of life, which means to make one a well-rounded individual.
Former President's Committee on Culture, Director Jesus Cruz reminisced. National Artist for Literature N.V.M. Gonzalez paid the highest tribute when he remarked to President Felixberto Santamaria, "And I thought that UP was the best." In addition to performances in the auditorium, the President's Committee on Culture began overseeing all university-wide cultural groups. It first started with a bamboo band, chorale, and dance company, followed by the Drum and Bugle Corps and Theater Guild, and then by the drummers and the guides.
It helps that the university's top management share my vision and give me the support I need. That in itself is a wonderful way to be able to plan a season. And I plan it balancing theater and dance and music, featuring our cultural groups and those from outside. If it's in theater, there's in English, there's in Filipino. If there is dance and it's ballet, but there's also hip-hop and there's contemporary, there's jazz, there's ballroom. For music, it can be a whole gamut from opera to orchestras to chamber music, but we also have a bamboo band, we have a marching band, we have so many different kinds of performances that come into a season and that have to be factored in.
One of my most memorable experiences in this auditorium is when my daughter Bianca danced on stage and my mother and I were in the audience. She was a student at the Steps Dance Company and they had a performance there. In fact, I have a very dramatic shot of her in my office room where she's on the stage and you have the audience portion as a backdrop. I really loved watching her dance.
It brings so much memories. Ang dami kasi, in a way, it opened my vulnerability as an artist. Isang malaking medium siya para ma-open ko yung sarili ko doon sa auditorium. Pag kami nagpo-perform, sobrang ang daming puso, ang daming mata, ang daming puso, ang daming tengang nakikinig. Kasi connected sila dun sa dula, connected sila dun sa play na pinapalabas namin. At nararamdaman mo yun sa aura, sa energy ng buong auditorium. It was so full of love, it was so full of laughter, so full of tears, and everybody was just watching and listening. At nare-receive namin yun as performers, nare-receive namin yun as actors. Kaya ang saya-sayang mag-perform ng paulit-ulit.
Talent and potential were further harnessed amongst the students. The chosen few were given the rare opportunity and honor to represent not just FEU, but the Philippines in international festivals, competitions, and performances. In 2016, the FEU Auditorium was temporarily shut down for renovation. With the threat of the floors not being able to withstand the weight of performers, sets, and instruments, its last performance was on the eve of the honoring of National Artists for Music with a performance of the Manila Symphony Orchestra. The performance was moved to the grandstand. It was a cloudless, breezy night, and more than 2,000 attended. The structure needed an upgrade. National artist Pablo Antonio's architect son, June, and granddaughter Cholette gathered their plans.
One of the first things we did when we renovated the auditorium was to provide air conditioning as per the original intent of architect senior's design. We had to remove all the split type units in the auditorium since it had a humming sound inside the auditorium and was affecting the acoustics of the building. We got some consultants from the CCP to help us in providing good lighting and sound to keep it up to the industry standards at that time. New padded walls were added to improve the acoustics and bring it to its original intent. Restoring the original design, intent, and adapting to newer changes will always be a never-ending project.
The specs were brought to the digital age with a modernization of both lights and sound. Structural support was improved, as well as the stage floor, giving it the needed bounce for dancers. All the equipment was akin to the theater at Soler, to accommodate the very best performing arts talents in the country and those visiting from different parts of the world. In 2019, the auditorium reopened with a staged reading of Nick Joaquin's Portrait of an Artist as Filipino, closing the year-long celebrations of the National Artist for Literature's birth centenary. In early 2020, the world faced an unprecedented global pandemic. COVID-19 meant schools had to be closed until further notice. The country was on lockdown. In its final performance before the lockdown, the FEU Dance Company celebrated its 60th anniversary. One of its choreographers, a former FEU Dance Company artistic director, Shawnee Alsona Henry, flew in from San Diego for a collaboration.
When we danced back then, we have an orchestra right on the very top. No canned music. Everything was live. FEU really did a lot of good things to a lot of students, you know?
Now is pandemic time, so things have all slowed down, but for sure the FEU Auditorium will come alive in full force once more to continue its mission of awakening our students to a life much enriched by culture and the arts.
COVID-19 has taught us to explore different ways to bring our shows to our audiences online. We've had to experiment with a lot of things, like, for example, the chorale members had to sing from the safety of their homes, sometimes inside cabinets, because that was the quietest places in their homes. And the dancers had to learn how to dance within the limits of their phone cameras. And of course, we had to develop the technical skills to be able to stitch all these performances together.
The artistic directors I mentioned earlier, and I have 7 of them, whether pandemic or not, they commit to at least 12 hours a week of classes or rehearsals for the student artists.
With these new life parameters, FEU needed to adjust to keep performing arts alive. It was during these uncertain times that the President's Committee on Culture was renamed and relaunched as the FEU Center for the Arts.
The administration, especially the president, wished to encourage the students to appreciate the arts, drama, music, and dance, to be performed mostly in the auditorium.
See, the arts have survived so many different pandemics, and they have been used as a way to get through the pandemic, emotionally, mentally. It's a source of inspiration. It's a source of hope. To some, it can also be an escape. But the arts have been there, are there, and will be there. We want to show our community that they might not be able to come to FEU in person, but they can still experience all this wonderful artistic content online.
School cannot just be about, for instance, developing cognitive skill. Being human, there is a whole new world, an other world, which is all about affections, about being drawn to, you know, the beautiful. So there are at least 3. The first of which is, and not in any order, but the first it can be said to be the Magisteria of Science, where you pursue, you know, falsifiable hypotheses. And then there's the Magisteria of Religion and Philosophy, where you basically the way to truth is about logic. And then the third is the Magisterium of Beauty, which is all about the arts. So arts is about what is beautiful. And through the years, obviously the rules or the way we see what beautiful is has changed with time, with the artists. And so if you are acquainted with the arts, it gives you another window to appreciate different peoples and different times and places. even when we were founded, we were already serious about arts.
Well, here at FEU, we just follow the mantra, the show must go on. So we found other mediums and other platforms and found ways to bring all the shows to our audiences online.
Every cultural group had to relearn its craft and to adapt to this new way of life. The student artists met on new platforms and performed differently. But the creativity never came to a stop. Students continued practicing and performing from their homes, finding new ways to express themselves. FEU has become the birthplace of artistic talent that has led to prolific careers in the performing arts, both here and abroad. Some of the most notable Filipino artists across all genres came from FEU, and some even became national artists. Whether it be in academics, sports, or the arts, FEU takes pride in its role in Philippine education and in becoming a model institution of learning for the future.
My father would be very happy to see how the auditorium has made an impact on the lives of students and of the FEU community. I feel that it is education and art and culture that bring out the best in them.
In FEU, we don't have any majors for the performing arts. But we have these cultural groups which provide scholarships so that they can complete their college degree using the arts. They have a fallback for when maybe they can no longer dance or act or play a musical instrument. Although acting and playing a musical instrument is something that they can do even later in life. But they have fallbacks. They have a choice whether to pursue their artistic inclinations or their career based on what they studied here, or they can also do both. But at least there are more options for them when they leave FEU. We are blessed with that legacy, but we are also challenged to continue to build on that legacy and to continue making this space available for artists, for audiences, not just from the FEU community, but from outside. With many theaters around this area having been torn down, the FEU Auditorium stands proud and is the only one left of its kind, so we really have to take care of it. One of my favorite quotations, and I even think it will be great on my epitaph, is the title of an aria from the opera of Puccini. It's Tosca. It's how Act 2 begins with Tosca singing "Visi d'arte, visi di amore." I live for art, I live for love. And I think that no matter what we're experiencing in life, as a nation, as individuals, as a global community, the arts will always be there.
I think my grandfather would be very happy to see FEU where it is today. His vision of giving equal attention to academics, the sports, and the arts is alive and well. And I think his desire to provide equal opportunities for all. We also are quite diverse in our population, and I think that the way FEU has grown would make him extremely proud.
From one man's simple dream to develop students who are well-rounded in academics, athletics, and artistry, so much talent has been born and cultivated. This dream led to more dreams that are now a reality. The auditorium is truly the heart of FEU. It beats through the changes of time. Despite its ups and downs, its stage curtains will always be ready to open.
The present administration is pledging the same commitment as Dr. Reyes to provide students and the community an excellent venue for the blossoming of the arts, in the belief that civilization, culture, and refinement help us achieve humanity both for individual perfection and for mutual love and understanding.
Bravo to Alexandra Lizo Garcia and her team. Let's give them a round of applause. Bravo too to the one who conceptualized the idea of a lasting tribute to the history and legacy of this temple of the arts, and who pushed to make it happen despite the odds. To close today's program, here is FEU founder Nicanor Reyes' granddaughter and current Senior Vice President for Corporate Affairs, Attorney Gianna Reyes Montinola.
Greetings to all at FEU, friends, ladies, and gentlemen. Although the pandemic affected the production schedule of Bravo, our dedicated team persevered and made it possible for us to premiere this documentary in time for the celebration of the FEU Auditorium's anniversary. We wanted to showcase the auditorium's history and to pay tribute to all who kept it alive and relevant, both to FEU and to the country during these past years. We hope you enjoyed it. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all who made this possible. To Martin Lopez, Director of the FEU Center for the Arts, and his team, Clarissa May Narida, J.M. Isla, and Mark Sinai, for going through the FEU archives to gather years of photos, data, and memorabilia. To Katrina Escay and Jen Lagman of Ninja Dog Studios, Inc., for skillfully crafting the script which became the foundation of Bravo. To Alexandra Lizo Garcia and her crew at Back to Back Multimedia for creatively stitching everything together. To Diego Abad for lending us his voice, which gave life to the rich and vibrant story of the FEU Auditorium. To the president and management team of FEU, who supported this project and approved all our numerous, sometimes unreasonable requests. To the Marketing and Communication Office, Christian Evasco, Jean Sikam, Aki Yatko, Faye Visa, and Delo Campo, who coordinated with all the teams involved and kept everyone on track. And last but not least, to all of you who joined us today on Zoom for the premiere of Bravo. A huge round of applause to all of us. Good morning.
Thank you, Attorney Gianna. Ladies and gentlemen, the FEU hymn to be performed by the FEU Chorale.
Our voices shall